back to part 2 of Henry Walker's story, right here on My Life, His Story, presented by Reboot Recovery. If you joined us last week, you heard about how Henry had experienced significant amounts of trauma as a child, from physical, mental, verbal, sexual, and how those experiences really led him down a road of bad decision making and numbing and running. And right before we ended the episode, you had talked about you and Miss Sandra being married for 6 months and adopting this 2-day-old baby, Alex.
Right.
And that him showing up in your driveway kind of sparked it. So tell me, at this time, describe what life was like at the Walker residence with this 2-day-old baby, 6 months of marriage. Like, kind of just fill me in on what was going on.
One word, chaos.
I love the honesty.
One word, chaos.
Yeah.
Joy beyond all joy, but chaotic as all get out. Because we're both learning how to be mom and dad to a newborn. And I hadn't been able to be a dad except when my oldest was born for just a couple of years. And my wife had never been a mom. And we had to learn day by day, step by step, everything there was about a newborn baby. But we also had friends next door who were already not grandparents, but close to it. And they were influential in helping us. But the one thing that they helped us was to get back into church. Believe it or not, at that point in time, we knew we had to be in church. And so we wanted to show off the baby. And that's what we did. We were going to the local, and it was, we got into a good group of friends, and we were trying to live the best way we could live as young parents and stuff like that. So, but that was the key, was having that brand new baby in the house, and life changes. You're a dad.
Yeah, I am.
And you know what newborns do to you.
Yeah, I used to have hair, believe it or not, before I started having kids.
I still have mine. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I don't want to speak for you, but this baby enters your life. That was the spark. Mm-hmm. Would you say that the second wave was community?
Second wave was community. And then we had to leave that community. In the military, as if anybody knows, you get orders. Yeah. And I had been selected for a new position. Well, not a new position, but I got selected into a very important position working for the United States Congress. Now I was a young E5, and our Alex was just barely a year and a half old. And we're having to uproot from where we were and go to the big city of Washington, D.C. And I had a set of orders working for the United States Congress. And that's where we sort of, I don't want to say, you've heard the old saying, backslide. We sort of slid away.
Sure.
We get into the big city. I'm working 7 days a week, 6 days a week. And so not that our faith slid, but our ideas of living changed a little bit because we just weren't connected.
Yeah.
And that connection was needed, but we also, you get sparks like you were talking about. The spark that started our path where we are today got relit. After working for Congress and spending every single day up there, we're averaging something like 75 hours per week, seeing and talking to the leaders of our country, and spending time with men of influence, but not, I don't want to say not godly men, but not men of God, is an easy way to put that. Some had faith, most never talked about it. And thus our conversations didn't get talked about. We didn't talk about our faith. And it was an interesting time, but we found out they had told us, to preface just a little bit, the reason we adopted, one of the biggest reasons we got to adopt, because they told us we would never have children. And remember I said, God has always been close by.
Yeah.
We found out 4 months or 5 months before we were to leave DC, we found out we were pregnant with our youngest son, Noah. Even though we had slid away a little bit, our faith was rekindled by knowing we were going to have a child together.
Sure.
And a new set of orders. And so we got to move to Memphis, Tennessee, from Washington, D.C. Got down there, had a brand new baby, found a church, got plugged back in, got plugged into friends. And I sort of knew then that things were going to change. I didn't know how. I didn't know what was going to happen. But I just knew something was going to change to be better. I was the lead guy in my department. My wife didn't want to work, so she was going to take care of 2 kids, and we just started living life in a little bitty small town in West Tennessee. And good circle of friends, a great circle of friends, and part of a local church. And guess what? We still made mistakes.
Right. But it's interesting because that second wave was community.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like the third wave
Was community.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to know, like, we find healing in community.
Oh man, but we do. That was, we talk about community, and if you allow it to be part of your life, it becomes everything that you want it to be. Sometimes you push that away, and I've done that. Life goes on, and we moved to Puerto Rico, and we're going to chapel on base, and we're trying to raise kids, and we're trying to do what life wants us to do, and we're trying to do the very best we can do with everything we've got. And then you have retirement.
Yeah.
And that was a huge change for me, but also probably one of the best things that's ever happened. We retired from the Navy and moved to Hopkinsville, Kentucky. I'm sorry, did I say Hopkinsville out loud? But anyway, we moved to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and I met the first year, my last year in the military. I remember going to a church service on Sunday morning on Easter, and I met one of the closest friends I've ever had in my entire life. His name was Ron Hicks, and he was a pastor at Henderson Memorial Baptist Church. And I knew at that point in time, that's where the change was going to happen. Don't ask me how. I knew. Became part of the church. Became, I don't want to say leaders in the church, but it became part of the church family, community. Again, we had men's groups, and we had committees, and life started to live better than we'd ever lived before because of that community we talked about a minute ago. And things go on, life happens, you do what you do, and all of a sudden years go by, and you watch your kids grow up, and they graduate high school, and they go to college, and then you retire again. And then you sit back and you think about, holy smoke, what have I been and what have I been doing? And we made the final move 6 years ago. And I remember there's so many times that I've thought back about the past over the last 5 or 6 years. And I remember talking in the men's group, but never being able to share those deep down, those things I was hiding.
Sure.
But it was the beginning steps of being able to open up and find out who God really was and how important he was in my life and where he was leading me. And I sit back and I almost get choked up thinking about how important it is now and wishing that it had been that important 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But I have learned so much just in the last 15 years about what we get from who gave us everything.
Wow.
I met a men's group. They helped me make steps. I would get asked to be in charge of, hey, can you lead next week for me? So that was in Hopkinsville, and we moved again. The kids grew up, they moved out of town, and I moved to Clarksville. And
Tennessee.
in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Yep.
And you've heard this story before, but we knew we needed a church. Because my old pastor, or my pastor Ron, had said, what kind of pastor would I be if I made you come to my church? And it's that long a ride. He said, I want you to be comfortable. And we visited the church we attend now, which is Bethel Community Church. And I got involved with another men's group. And the same thing happened again. I got told or got asked with my arm behind my back if I would lead a group on Saturday and lead another time on Saturday. And now, as well as you know, I now get to lead the men's group or B-men. But that walk has been, remember you said there was no big, gigantic,
Sure,
fall on my knees moment. But that path has been there for me to follow. It was my choice to follow or not. And I chose to do the following. I chose to follow that path. And he just tapped me on the shoulder, would guide me over here and help me, give me ideas and give me friends and give me people and to make the solid choices to lead a good life. And I'm going to plug Reboot. I have to. You and I had a conversation about 3.5 years ago. And the first time I ever spoke to anybody about the abuse was when you and I talked about it. And it opened up so many avenues. It's opened up so many pathways for me to overcome what the past was. Because if I live in the past, if I continue to walk in that stuff, I'll never get to tomorrow.
that's right.
In any circumstance would I ever do that.
That's right.
And so
I had a graduate once that told me he was a Vietnam vet. He had came through Reboot. Had never shared anything. Even during the group, he didn't say much, ever, until graduation. And he stood up on stage, and in front of everybody, he said, "The greatest gift that Reboot gave me was the ability to acknowledge my past without having to live in it." Mm. And that sounds like you're saying, now, let me ask you this. So knowing now, you are a church leader.
yes, I am.
You lead the men's group. You serve multiple areas in the church, as well as your wife. Both of you are serving the church. If you could sit down with 18-year-old Henry, and you could tell him that he was going to be a church leader, right? What do you think his reaction would be?
You're full of crap.
Yeah.
I can tell you that for a fact. 15 or 20 years ago, if I would have had no idea of where I would be right now. No idea at all. Because 20 years ago, I was still active duty, and I was just living life. I was just doing,
Right.
I was just doing the
Absolutely.
just doing the thing, with no idea of what my life was going to do or who I would even impact at all. Never even thought about it. Wouldn't think about it. You know, it's one of the things that worries me more today is like, am I still doing it right? I think about that all the time.
Yeah. Well, a couple final questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
The first one being, you know, if somebody's listening or watching right now,
Right.
and they find themselves in that place of numbing or running or hiding, or, you know, instead of addressing their trauma, they're stuffing it in their sack.
Right.
They're trying to bury it. What is the one piece of advice you would give them?
The one thing that I would tell somebody is don't hide it. Let somebody know. Everybody, I mean, I've had people say, well, we can pray about it. That's great. It's great to pray about it, but you have to tell somebody. You have to physically open up your mouth and you have to say something. You have to tell someone what's happening. And I use you as an example. I've always said this. Had it not been for you asking me or just talking to me, I remember the day I told you. And I remember that the weight lifted that day.
Wow.
I always brag about you because I love you. You know that. And I'll tell you that to your face. I'll tell it to anybody. When someone cares enough to ask you a question, then you should care enough to tell them what you need to say.
Wow. You know, I think going along with what you're saying in Luke chapter 10 and 11,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's where Jesus is sending the 72 out.
Right.
And one of the things that he says there is to find a person of peace. You know, and I think you're right. It is best to talk about it.
Oh,
right.
man.
But at the same time, you got to find that person of peace
Mm-hmm.
around you. For some, it may be a minister. It may be a pastor. It may be a friend. It may be a social worker. Whatever it is, you've got to find that person of peace, right? That's willing to not just hear what you have to say, not offer you advice, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you told me and I didn't say, oh, you need to X, Y, Z. I was just there.
Right.
And I just listened.
That's exactly right.
And I think finding that person of peace is super important. And maybe you're looking around right now and you're saying, well, I don't have a person of peace. I don't have those people in my life. The good news is you can go to rebootrecovery.com/join. We have groups all over the country. At the same time, we have virtual groups. So even if you're in a place where there's not a group there, you can still join one of our virtual groups and go through this trauma healing course. And also, you can find your person of peace.
Right.
Henry, final question.
Answer.
65 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Your life is, I mean, this is, and I acknowledge, we just tried to sum up 65 years in 30 minutes, which is impossible.
Yes.
There's pain we didn't talk about. There's joy we didn't talk about. There's trials, tribulation, persecution. There's all these things that we didn't talk about. My final question is this, Henry. After you overcame your trauma and you confronted it,
Mm-hmm.
how did your life change by helping others overcome theirs?
Oh, man. By sharing it now, I've been able to help lead reboot classes. My relationship with my wife has gotten closer than it's been in 33 years. My sons and I have open dialogue where we can talk and converse and we talk about life. Anxiety is at a minimum. Confrontation sometimes sticks its big head up there, but life has changed dramatically. My faith is stronger than it's ever been. I believe I know. I don't have to believe anything. I know who my Lord and Savior is. I don't have to question that anymore. I don't even have to doubt anything anymore. I don't wake up at night with thoughts in my head. I don't have to worry. I really don't. That inner peace, and I don't mean that like in a holistic way, but I'm talking a physical, inside my heart, inside my chest is a peace that it's unexplainable how peaceful it is when you wake up every morning and you don't have to worry about anything. You really don't.
Good.
Yeah. That's the
awesome.
easiest way to say it.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for letting me.
Yeah, I truly appreciate it, and I have a feeling we'll have you on again because there's more to your story. There's
a lot in there.
There is. There's a lot in 65 years.
Yes, there is. There is.
Awesome. Well, thank you for watching this episode of My Life, His Story. Make sure that you like, comment, share, tell your friends about it. If you know somebody that needs a pick-me-up, absolutely check out this episode as well as some of the previous episodes. We've talked with a lot of people about a lot of different things, and so make sure you're following along to catch the next episode of My Life, His Story.